Okay, we are now live. Thank you everyone for joining so far. I'll just kickstart today's Lloyd's Academy session. Hi everyone, again, this is Hannah from Lloyd's Asia's Market Development Team based here in Singapore. Welcome to the second week of Lloyd's Academy APMEA Emerging Risk Series 2025. Before we begin today's session, I'd just like to share a quick disclaimer. The views expressed here by our speakers today are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Lloyd's Corporation as well as our service companies. This series is also intended for educational and informational purposes only. So please remember, nothing shared here constitutes as a formal piece of advice or is an official Lloyd's position. In terms of CPD hours, do note that each webinar qualifies for 1 CPD hour, and to receive recognition for this, do stay with us until the end of the webinar, and I will be sharing a feedback form link, and you'll fill that up for the CPD hour. We encourage you also to use the Q&A function and ask a lot of questions to engage with our speakers throughout this meeting. Okay, so without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers for today on tech-driven embedded solutions with Discover Market. They are also a very, very special group because they
I think Anna got dropped off. So Discovery Market is also part of our Lloyd's Lab Alumni, which is our InsurTech accelerator based in London. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Patrick and Alex to start the session.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you and introduce the tech-driven embedded solutions around carbon credit, sustainability, which makes or provides a lot of benefits actually to the crop insurance, and guide you through that presentation together with Alex. If we move on the next slide, we first start with a quick session and introduce you to Discover Market. Who is actually Discover Market? What are we doing? Where are we coming from? And what are we doing today? And then we drive into the tech-driven solutions that help us to address emerging risks around in the agriculture market with new solutions. So Discover Market has been founded in 2021 with the vision to actually close the protection gap with embedded insurance solutions and help the underserved. And it was really about getting access to customer segments that have not been served so far. So what we do is not the traditional embedded insurance solutions like other companies are doing it, where we end up in competing with actual insurance companies, but it's about being complementary to insurance companies and brokers out there in the world, helping them to get access to new customer segments through our tech solution that is linked to ecosystems and trusted brands that have a high customer base that are so far not reachable for traditional insurance companies. And we come to that point later in the presentation how we are doing that. Discover Market we are a tech company in general. There is one exception, and I come to that later on. We are a tech company with a one-stop shop platform. That actually means that a one-stop shop platform means that for a global trusted brand or partner that has a large customer base, they access our platform with one integration, and they can, with that one integration, go to multiple insurance companies in multiple countries with multiple products. And for the partner, it means using one integration instead of going one by one to every insurance company for every product, having one integration, one specific payload. I don't want to make it too technical, but it's one integration, and then you get access to many, many different offers from different countries and different insurance companies and different products. So it's one platform. We work today with 35 plus insurance companies and brokers. We also try to include always prevention partners into our offering because, and we talk about that later on as well, what we think is key is that you cannot provide insurance about emerging risks to customers without educating the customers, and prevention solutions are a very good way of educating customers about specific emerging risks, because else they would not buy that respective products. We are today live with seven products. They range from cyber retail, cyber corporate, to agriculture products, but also over home contents, deposit insurance. So we are there rather product agnostic when it comes to that, but we have a strong focus on products that help us, and we come to that later as well, that help us to close the protection gap around emerging risks. We are, I would say, almost a globally spread company. Nowadays, we have 2 tech hubs in Portugal and in Vietnam, and we have business hubs in Switzerland and in Singapore. And in Brazil, we operate with our own broker license in the embedded insurance market. Now, when we go into the topic of the protection gap, we would like to open the session with some key questions, where you can ask yourself a little bit, yeah, what do you know about the protection gap, or reflect on those questions as we answer them on the later slides. One of them, which is very key, that we really need to be aware of, right? So how many people on this planet have actually no bank account? And when we go into crop insurance, how many smallholder farmers need season starting financing support? And which regions or countries are the most exposed to the rise of cybercrime? And how has the protection gap actually evolved over the last 13 years? Right? So often we say ourselves, poor people that are affected by the protection gap, you know, they don't have assets that we actually need to protect, which is a little bit a short-sighted view. I'm working in this industry since 1999, and the protection gap has actually always been growing, because we still think that those people, they don't need anything, but the connectivity need in remote places or where the poor are living is just huge, because else nothing is working there. And also for agriculture, smallholder farmers, the survival of an entire family depends on the yield and on managing natural catastrophes in a very well and nice way. So let's have a quick look on the next slide on the first question that I raised before: how many people are actually unbanked? And it's still, and this is, I mean, it's a huge number, right? It's still above 1 billion people that are aged 15 plus don't have a bank account. And when I look back in the past, the purchase of insurance has always been linked to having a bank account. And this means 24% of the global population has no access to a bank account, and in today's world have difficulties. I don't say it's impossible, but have a lot of difficulties in getting any protection. And the biggest region where people are unbanked is actually in North Africa and in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia and in LATAM. So it's a little bit the regions where we are present with Discover Market, and we really try to tackle this specific gap with tech solutions that we can unlink the traditional insurance purchase from the need of having an own bank account. So when we now look into the protection gap, we have been talking about the protection gap already when I started my career in 1999 in the insurance world, and we always said, yeah, we want to close it. But since then, it has risen dramatically. And when we look at the number, you know, and this is a 7 trillion, 7.5 trillion gap that we have there in the market, it represents our current market size that we have on the insurance market. So if we find a solution to tackle the protection gap in the right way, we can open up a market that has the same size that the current market already has. And then now look at which are the countries that have not a lot of insurance penetration on the right-hand side. we see some of the countries, or most of the countries, are the ones that are also unbanked. So there's a clear correlation between unbanked countries and the protection gap. But now we talk about the protection gap and hear about the question how to get access to those people. It is also about what kind of products are really relevant for them today, but also going forward. And I want to focus, as we try always to look into the future, to focus on what is needed going forward, and the emerging risks that we see and we want to tackle as this cover market is really cybercrime. Meaning going a little bit beyond the traditional products that we have, cybercrime, where we have a lot of attacks again in the same regions. It's Africa, APEC, Latin America. Europe rather seems to be protected here in that view, right? It's not that there is no risk there neither, but we suffer much more cyber attacks and cybercrime in the regions where the protection gap is actually high, and the people are really in the need of digital connectivity. And of course, on the other side, climate change. I think we don't need to discuss that a lot, which is for us a heartfelt thing that we can do as an industry something and enable the industry to fight climate change with the initiative that Alex will explain you later around sustainable practices and agriculture insurance that is financed through actually carbon credits and sustainability initiatives. Yeah. So let's quickly go onto the business model of this cover market. We are providing a one-stop shop that solves the problem of accessibility for insurance companies. So we are complementary to insurance companies and brokers, but also reinsurance companies, and of course also the Lloyd's market, and not a competitor. That's really important to mention. And we actually try to tackle the protection gap with pure technology solutions and collaborate with partners on the insurance side to make that gap smaller. And we try to bridge this gap in the growth regions that we see out there in the market. So we don't focus too much on Europe for the time being, for example, or the northern part of the US. We try to work in Southeast Asia with telcos when it comes to connectivity and cybersecurity, and we work on a worldwide basis to enhance the resilience of smallholder farmers. And let me show you over the next slide how this looks like. So we have usually, and you see at the bottom of this slide, we have the insurance companies, also TPAs, claim providers, different insurance companies that have today a lot of difficulties to access actually the protection gap and access the people that don't have a bank account, but also the ones that have a bank account with the relevant products at the right moment in time. And this is the bridge that we built with this cover market that you see here on this picture, that tries to connect the insurance companies who exactly those trusted brands or ecosystems, how I also call it, where a real customer or an insurance a need for getting more resilient is actually created, and the customer is also made aware of it. So we often go out there in the market, originate also deals with those partners, and then collaborate with insurance companies to close that gap for them. And we do that, and you see that here visualized on the right-hand side again. It's providing a one-stop shop solution. That means one integration for this trusted brand, and with that solution, he gets access to embedded insurance capabilities, monitoring product libraries that we have on our platform, but also processes and technology that can also be on the mobile phone of that specific user or customer. But they are actually backed by insurance companies that are on our platform and that partner with us via our platform. And those are multiple insurance companies. And as I mentioned before on an initial slide, there are 35 plus. So we try to connect the supply with the demand. And what we do different than others, we try to do that in a low cost manner. By doing so, and on the next slide, you will see what are the benefits that we actually provide to our partners. We help the trusted brands to actually escape the commodity trap, because the trusted brands and all the digital brands out there, be it an e-wallet or a telco, or any others, and you see that also with Apple, right? They have, at the end, they have commodity products out there, and it's for them difficult to compete just with the pure core product because it's available everywhere. There are not many differences between Samsung and iPhone, for example, and they have shrinking profit pools for the time being. And by now providing embedded insurance solutions to them, we can create there an opportunity that they can get on board new customers through this unique selling proposition that they have, increase the customer engagement or reduce churn, but also increase their profit pool by making them actually participate in getting the customers more resilient and upselling also their own solutions that they have into the insurance world. For the brokers, insurance and reinsurance companies, it's really about getting access to new customer segments that were not accessible today. It's tapping into this 7.5 trillion market that is new. And the TPAs that get also access to new customer segments that they could not access so far. And TPAs is here, and you see that in brackets. We talk here about prevention providers. So, for example, when you talk about cyber, it's cybersecurity services that we try to link with cyber security insurance products that are just a financing solution, but we need to educate the customer before we make them buy insurance. Yeah, so how have we started as this color market on this journey, right? So we tried to bridge that in growth regions. We started in Southeast Asia in 2021, have deployed in 2023. We went live with Telkomsel and Globe, so two of the biggest telcos here in the region, to distribute relevant products to their customers. Mainly for now the telcos, it's about cybersecurity, of course, but not limited to cybersecurity. But we also tried to explore a little bit to go into the agriculture business because we realized that with our platform, we can issue a policy at very, very low cost. And we saw a unique opportunity that where we could say, hey, if we can go into prepaid markets of telcos, we could also go into the agriculture business where farmers actually don't have access to insurance today, and we can make that cheaper for those farmers by providing parametric products, leveraging satellite images to make them more resilient for a much lower price than the traditional insurance would actually cost them. But we then actually realized, well, they are not buying that on its own, and then we found a way that Alex will talk to you about later when we go into his section. That is the main topic for today: how this can be financed through other means. So what we do with the telcos, this is what you see here. This is the telco bridge, right? Where we partner with telecommunication companies with products around online identity theft, online fraud, anti-scam solutions, online shopping protection. But we also realized, and you see here the names, are the traditional names that we always use in the insurance industry. We need to talk another language if you want to bring those products to the customers, because they don't understand what does actually online fraud in transfers mean, right? But if we talk a little bit more specific about the sub-segment of this, anti-scam or smishing and phishing, then we can clearly address a real need out there and help them to get more resilient. Now, where are we today, and what are we doing today? And this is now, I think, the very important part where then also Alex comes in. If we go on the next slide. We see in 2024, we then had the idea, and I talked before, satellite images, we are doing parametric products. We wanted to bring that to the agriculture business and the farmers. They're not willing to pay for this, right? They don't want to pay for this, even if it's really low cost. They don't want to pay for this. We have then found a way together with Alex where we can subsidize that through additional benefits that we provide in an ecosystem to subsidize actually the crop insurance for smallholder farmers through sustainability practices. And this is today one of our main initiatives that we are driving on a global scale by leveraging our platform, because we can do that at a really, really low cost. So this means we can send back and forth a lot of data that we use for parametric analysis and actually transform the way how agriculture insurance or crop insurance is financed for smallholder farmers and resolve, I think, a big problem that we have today in the insurance industry and why we could never access smallholder farmers so far. But please, Alex, tell us how does this work?
Thank you, Patrick. So hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm head of data science and sustainable risk management at Discover Market. So I'm going to present now the carbon credit linked insurance, which is a crop insurance product that we developed during our time at Lloyd's lab last year. So we were part of the cohort number 13. Basically, we came up with this idea to address another major emerging risk that we are all aware of, which is the climate change, of course. So we know that climate change is stressing the global food production system, and 1/3 of the world's food is produced by smallholder farmers. So the issue is that 90% of them don't have crop insurance, and this is, of course, a major threat to global food security. And despite that, almost all attempts to implement crop insurance at scale for smallholder farmers have failed in the past. So we are in a situation where we have 2.7 billion people who depend on smallholder farmers to eat every day, but we can't find a solution to provide these farmers with the crop insurance. So the question is really why? What is so hard in providing crop insurance to these smallholder farmers? So we have identified three main reasons explaining this continuous failure. First, these farmers are hard to reach. They have small farms that are scattered. They don't have a bank account, as Patrick was saying. They are unfamiliar with insurance. So the first problem, of course, is distribution. It's a major issue. The second issue is that they just can't afford it. As Patrick was saying, it's very hard to get them to pay for the insurance. They don't see the value of it. So the few programs that start rely on subsidies from governments or grants from NGOs. And of course, subsidies don't last forever. So when they stop, the farmers don't renew the insurance policy. And the final big problem is that for practical and economical reasons, the insurance solutions that these farmers are offered with are parametric insurances. And with parametric insurance comes basis risk, right? And it results in unfair and compensated losses. And of course, for these farmers, it's a major trust issue. And it's not something that they can accept because for them, it's such a sacrifice to pay for the insurance premium that basis risk is very critical in that specific context. So these are the problems. And with climate change, we know that these farmers are going to be increasingly at risk. And not only this is a risk for global food security, as I was saying, but it's also a major geopolitical concern, as this is expected to push millions of people in poverty and probably destabilize many developing economies. So what we see here is that the smallholder farmers are direct victims of climate change. But another important point is that agriculture is also responsible for 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So here we have at the same time farmers who are victims of climate change and who are contributing to it. And that's where the solution came from, right? It's taking advantage of that specific situation to make a difference. So to explain to you the concept of the carbon credit linked insurance, I will focus on one of the three issues, which is affordability for a short time. We'll just make a very strong focus on that. So if we look at crop insurance for smallholder farmers, on average, it should cost around $10, okay? But just issuing the policy would cost around $20. So probably you're seeing the problem here. The farms are so small that issuing the policy is more expensive than the policy itself. So historically, this gap has been breached by governments and NGOs, as I was saying, who subsidize crop insurance programs for smallholder farmers. But when the subsidies stop, the farmers can't afford the insurance anymore, so they don't renew. So as Patrick explained, thanks to our technology, we can solve some of these problems because we manage to have a very low issuance cost. So Discover Market is part of the solution. As that, this is really what we're seeing. It could help start bridging that gap, right? Because we reduce the issuance cost so much. And we also know that it's a huge opportunity in terms of market size. But realistically, our experience shows that even with this cheap issuance cost, we still need government support or NGO support to get programs started. And once again, when the support stops, who will pay for it? We don't know. So there's still a gap that is not bridged. And that's where the concept of the carbon credit linked insurance comes into place, because the idea is that to complete bridging the gap, we would use carbon credits revenue. So the combination of carbon credits revenue and Discover Markets platform can help make crop insurance accessible for smallholder farmers without the support of governments and NGOs. So how does it work concretely and where this money comes from? I know carbon credits is a word that we hear a lot, but it's not always very clear where this additional revenue comes from. So I'll take an example, a very simple but very good example, which is rice farming. So why rice farming in particular? First, because 1 in 2 people in the world depends on rice as a staple food. So this is something we need for sure. We can't stop producing rice. The second thing is that rice farming is responsible for 11% of global methane emissions. So in terms of impact on global warming, it's about the same as the entire aviation sector, just rice farming. So this is huge. It's really significant. It's not something small. Rice farming is responsible for about the same impact as the entire aviation sector in terms of greenhouse gas emission and impact. It turns out when rice farmers turned from traditional irrigation to sustainable irrigation practices, they can reduce these emissions by 50%. So it's really huge once again. And the idea is that when we turn those emission reductions into revenue, then this additional revenue that goes to the farmer can help pay the insurance premium. So that's where the concept of carbon credit linked insurance came from, taking advantage of that particular additional revenue that comes from sustainability to help finance the insurance premium. But it has additional advantages. It's not only about basically removing the financial barrier to insurance. It has additional benefits. The first one is that these projects, the carbon credit projects, they already exist. And so you have project developers out there that are private entities usually. They already enroll the farmers. They work with them to help them change their farming practices. They provide them support, guidance. And then these project developers, they earn carbon credits on behalf of the farmers and they share the revenue. So what we can do is leverage this existing framework and we can embed the crop insurance for the farmer into the contract that links the farmer to the project. And this helps a lot solving the distribution issue because suddenly we have a natural aggregator that can help distribute the insurance at scale with a single point of contact. And it's also, so like it's hundreds of farmers per project or even thousands of farmers per project. And these projects are also very long-term. So it's a better aggregator that, say, I don't know, a fertilizer company, because you never know if on the next season the farmer will purchase the same fertilizer, right? But when farmers are enrolled in the project, it's always a long-term contract. So this brings a very high quality aggregator into play. As I said, the second advantage is the financial benefit, right? It helps lowering the financial barrier. But there's an additional and final benefit that is super important, and that is helping reduce the basis risk. So as I said, one of the major problems with parametric insurance for smallholder farmers is the basis risk. But in the context of carbon credit projects, it turns out the project developers need to collect high quality data to prove that the sustainable practices are indeed adopted. This data is usually very expensive. So if you had to purchase it to operate an insurance product, it would make the insurance unaffordable, basically, because the data is too expensive. But in the context of a carbon credit project, the data is here and it's been paid for by the project developer. It's part of the budget to get the carbon credits. And at Discover Market, we are able to leverage that verification data to reduce the basis risk. And I will explain a bit later how we do that. So now I'd like to insist on the fact that this particular concept not only helps a lot solving these issues, but it also brings a lot of powerful synergies. So the first one is the financial synergy, and I already explained part of this synergy, explaining that the carbon credits revenue makes the insurance more affordable, and of course the insurance makes the farmers more resilient. But an important point is that this insurance also benefits to the project developer because it makes the farmers more resilient. And to illustrate that, I will take I will zoom in a bit on what actually happens into projects in reality. So what you can see on the right is a graph showing the expected revenue, or like the estimated revenue of a carbon credit project with respect to time. So the estimated one is the gray line, and the actual revenue is the dotted blue line. So we have to understand that a project, an agricultural carbon credit project, usually involve a lot of farmers, hundreds of farmers, as I was saying. So what happens when a farmer experiences a yield loss on a season? What happens to the carbon credits revenue, right? So when a farmer experiences a loss, of course, they don't get any money for the yield. So they experience yield loss. But all the credits that they were supposed to generate on that season also are lost. So it's a double loss. And for the project developer, it means that this farmer doesn't contribute to the revenue for that season. So it's a major problem, right? Like there's a loss of revenue for everyone, all the stakeholders. But more importantly, what happens when farmers experience consecutive yield loss? So like I have yield loss and on the next season, yield loss again, etc., etc. What tends to happen is that farmers leave the project. They leave the project because they can't, they go into debt, or they just don't believe that the new farming practice is good enough, and so they want to go back to traditional practices. And as the farmers leave the project, the actual revenue of the project decreases with time. So it's extremely important for the project developer to make sure that the farmers stick to the project, that they don't leave, and even to be able to enroll more farmers. So they need somehow to make the project attractive to these farmers. If I'm a farmer and my neighbor is like participating to this project, I must want to join the project as well. This is super important for the project revenue in the long term. So this is where crop insurance for the farmers is a major improvement for the project developers. Because now, of course, on a single season, when there's a yield loss, the credits are lost. So there's a small drop of revenue for the project. But thanks to the crop insurance, the farmers are able to recover. They don't go into debt. And on the next season, they are able to replant and to continue working for the project. And in the long term, they will continue generating revenue for the project. So this is to show you that the insurance is also a benefit for the project developers, not only the farmers, because it makes sure that the farmers want to stick in the project, and even that it's a benefit that comes with the project. If I go and participate to the project, I get a crop insurance, and that's a benefit for me as a farmer. But maybe more importantly, something that is also crucial in the carbon market is that the value of a carbon credit depends on many different things. And it depends in particular on the quality of the project. When a project developer decides to embed crop insurance into the project, they improve the stability of the financial situation of the farmers. They bring economical benefits to the farmer. That is recognized as a UN Sustainable Development Goal. And by doing that, it means that the project comes with what we call co-benefits. Co-benefits are like things that are not contributing to emission reductions, but that are bringing benefits to the wildlife, to the community that is involved in the project. And in that case, right, to the farmers. Because of that, the financial value of every single credit generated is mechanically increased because buyers perceive this project as a higher quality project. So they are willing to pay more for the same amount of reduction because they know that one credit comes with 1 ton of CO2 not emitted, but also with benefits for the farmers. And that's why this crop insurance, thanks to the co-benefit element, not only helps stabilizing the long-term revenue of the project, but also increases mechanically because it makes it a higher quality project. So that shows that the financial synergy is extremely powerful. The carbon credits revenue makes the insurance more affordable. The insurance makes the farmers more resilient. Thanks to that, the project size remains the same or even increases because the project is attractive and because the farmers stick to the project. So the number of farmers contributing to the project remains constant or increases, hence increasing the carbon credits revenue. And besides that, the financial value of each credit generated is also increased because the project quality is increased, which also contributes to increasing the carbon credits revenue. So it's not only carbon credits enabling the insurance, there's also a positive feedback loop that increases the revenue. So that is for financial synergies. And now I'll just spend a few minutes explaining the technology and ecosystem synergies. So when you look at the type of technology that is needed to operate this type of parametric crop insurance, you realize that a lot of things are also very useful in the carbon or even in the sustainability sector. So for example, satellite-based monitoring. So satellite images, they're used in the context of insurance for either parametric insurance, right? Like I can build a trigger that is based on NDVI for satellite imagery, but also to do a loss assessment. And at the same time, the same data can be used for the digital verification that I was mentioning before. So the project developers, they can use that data to make sure that the farmers adopted the right practices and to prove it so that they are entitled to carbon credits. So the same piece of data can be used in both sectors. As Patrick explained, our platform is a digital orchestration platform. So we connect different stakeholders, brokers, insurers, trusted brands, end customers, prevention partners, etc. So we need to orchestrate all that data. The different stakeholders need usually access to the same data, but with different level of permissions, different level of granularity, etc. And this is exactly the same in the context of carbon credits, because you have the project developers, you have the farmers, you have the body that is providing the carbon credits, etc. So this piece of technology is a very strong element of synergy as well. Then there's the agri-ecosystem. So as Patrick explained, we distribute insurance via trusted brands. So in the context of agriculture, it means that we partner with fertilizer companies, for example, and we embed a crop insurance into their fertilizer products. It turns out these fertilizer companies have a lot of expertise. So usually we can also ask them to play as a prevention partner. They can provide recommendation to the farmers. They can provide digital farming tools, help them applying the fertilizer at the right time, send them weather alerts, these type of things. And turns out they can also be project developers. They can also help the farmers adopt sustainable practices. So the same stakeholder in the ecosystem can be a very strong player in the insurance side of things and in the carbon credit side of things. And finally, an element that is crucial in insurance is that when you collect data to support a claim, the insurance company needs to be sure that the data can be trusted, that it's captured in a secured manner, that there's a timestamp, that it's not a fake photo or something like that. And well, for carbon credits, it's the same, right? People are paying money for those credits. So when you bring a proof to support the fact that you indeed adopted a sustainable practice, the way you collect the data needs to be very secure because people are paying for that. So here again, you have a very strong synergy that we are leveraging. Okay, so now concretely, how does this insurance product works? So if we take the example of a carbon credit project, right? So the project developers enrolls the farmers into the project as usual. And what they will do, they will offer a guarantee of a percentage of the yield to the farmer under certain conditions. So it's a guarantee, it's not an insurance. The project developer offers a guarantee to the farmers under certain conditions. And these conditions are going to reflect exactly the condition of the insurance product. Once this is done, the project developer registers all the farmers into Discover Market platform. So we get the farms data, etc. And we issue a contractual liability insurance policy for them based on all the farms. So the actual insured in that scheme is the project developer. It's not the farmers. The farmers are getting a guarantee from the project developer, and the project developer gets an insurance to cover that liability. At the end of the season, Discover Market checks any type of, like, say, weather data. So in that case, I say rainfall data. And if needed, we trigger claims. So we notify the insurance. And the insurance, if needed, pays out to the project developers. And from an insurance perspective, the story ends here. It is a pure weather parametric insurance, and the insured is the project developer. But at Discover Market, and that's where we reduce the basis risk, we have a final step. We use the digital verification data that the project developer is using for the carbon credits to draft a loss map. So we do a field level loss assessment using that high quality data. And we provide a loss map to the project developer that can distribute the payout to the farmers who were indeed really impacted. And so if there were inaccuracies due to the rainfall data on the parametric insurance side of things, we are able to correct it at the distribution step 4. Okay, finally, just want to show you a few prospects that we are working on, and I'll take just 1 minute to explain the first one, which is a very good example of how the concept expands beyond carbon credits. Because a common question we have is like, isn't carbon credit too small market today, especially agriculture one? And the answer is yes. If we were only focusing on carbon credit market, it would be too small. But here I will show you how the exact same concept applies beyond carbon credits. So we're working with a food company in Brazil that is sourcing raw materials from farmers. This company doesn't want to have anything to do with carbon credits, but they have a net zero commitment, scope 3 net zero commitment, which means that they need to reduce their emissions across their entire supply chain. So somehow they need the farmers they work with, who are not their employees. They need them to reduce their carbon footprint. To do that, they're willing to pay the insurance premium for them if they adopt regenerative agriculture. So what they do is that if the farmers indeed adopted the regen ag practices that they wanted to enforce, then the farmers get the crop insurance for free. That is distributed by us, Discover Market. So here you can see like we have the exact same ingredients. There's no carbon credits, right? But there's like this food company, which is the aggregator. We have the additional revenue because they need to provide an incentive to the farmers, a financial incentive to the farmers. So they provide an additional revenue that finance the insurance premium. And of course, once they pay for the insurance premium, they also want to make sure that the farmers indeed adopted RegionAg, right? So they need to verify that. So they need verification data. And once again, we can use that verification data to reduce the basis risk. And there are other scenarios where the same applies, but I will stop here because I think it's 45 minutes and I want to leave time for questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Patrick and Alex, for the really compelling, presentation and a lot of information on the slides. So we'll leave the key takeaways on the slides now and kickstart time for Q&A. Please feel free to drop any questions that you might have for our speakers today, and then I will read them out. But maybe I can start the ball rolling with a quick question first. So the presentation had a strong focus on carbon credit projects, for rice farming. I think that was one of the topics that Alex mentioned. So have you ever considered expanding these concepts to other kinds of other kinds of crops?
Yeah, so Patrick, if that's okay, I can take this one. So the example I was taking earlier for Brazil is actually not rice, it's cocoa, and we also have similar use cases with coffee. I gave the example of this Brazil food company that has a net zero commitment, and so it's the same concept is applied beyond carbon credits with net zero companies. There's another situation where we are seeing the same concept applying. There's a state in India that is facing major drought issues, and in the dry season they struggle with water usage. So they need to incentivize the farmers to produce, in that case it's rice as well, rice in that state. They need to incentivize them to reduce their water usage. So in that case, there's no interest really into greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So it's really not a carbon credit thing, but it's water usage management. And actually, we are discussing with them, and we are coming up with a very similar situation, because in that case, basically the state, to incentivize the farmers to change their irrigation practice to an irrigation practice that is reducing water usage, they are willing as well to provide a financial incentive. So here again, we have the state that acts as an aggregator. They are providing an additional revenue as a financial incentive to shift to a less water consuming irrigation practice. And they need verification data. So they need the same type of verification data as carbon credits providers. So it's not carbon credit in that case, and still it applies very well.
Okay, thank you. I'm just conscious we have one question coming in. So moving forward, are there any intentions to enter different markets? And so which markets do you intend are you planning to enter? And also, are there any factors, I would say, that kind of would guide your market selection?
Yeah, so of course, as it's a very global business, right? We have appetite to enter new markets. We have now taken a strategic selection of markets where we know we can act on our own in those markets. Then we have other markets where we know that we can only enter if we have strong partnerships, and there it really depends who wants to partner with us to go into those markets. So I make you some examples, right? So for example, if we would now want to go into India, right, which is a huge topic when it comes to agriculture business, we would only do that with a strong local partner. For the time being, we focus really on Southeast Asia and on Brazil. But if we would have a partner, and that can also be one of the international food companies that that Alex mentioned beforehand, and they want to go into a new market, like let's say in Africa, we would do that together with them, because from a tech perspective, it is highly scalable what we have. So of course, and this is also the reason why we have appetite to go into new markets, but we need to do that in a controlled way, and we should not do too much at the same time. But we can do a lot if we go in partnerships.
I see. Thank you. Alex, anything to add? Or maybe I move on to one more question?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, cool. I think my third question, I shift a little bit to talk about risk, right? That's anyway the key theme of our emerging risk. Yeah, this emerging risk series. So, considering the instability of carbon markets, in the recent years, how do you think, or how does this carbon market kind of mitigate the risk of reliance on your product?
Yeah, maybe I can start. So yeah, that's a very good question. So from a strategic perspective, we know that it's very risky to rely only on the voluntary carbon market. That would probably not be wise. So there are different options that we are exploring. First, I mentioned two examples that are not carbon credits related. So that's the first thing. Targeting net zero companies that are completely decorrelated from the carbon market is a good strategy. Then, even though the voluntary carbon market has been going down for the past 2 or 3 years, it's not the case of the compliance market. And with the Paris Agreement being now activated, we see that compliance market becomes more and more robust. And in the long term, there's also a high chance that the voluntary market converges to the compliance market too. So targeting those compliance markets is also a possible option. And in any case, if we start a deal, we know that usually the contracts are based on pre-purchased agreement that are usually 5 contracts that are 5 years. So it also helps mitigate the risk.
Okay, thank you for sharing. We have one more question coming through the chat, and they ask, are there any experience in Southeast Asia to sell the concept that has been materialized?
So we are like, yes, we are exploring, we are discussing with several potential clients who are interested. It's so it's always, first, it's a long-term process, right? It takes time to have these conversations, because if you approach a project that already exists, for example, usually the contracts have already been negotiated. So how the credits revenue is shared, etc., has already been agreed. So you really need to enter the conversation at the right time, which is when the project is almost ready, but not everything has been finalized. So we are having these conversations now. We see a lot of potential in the Philippines. The reason being that there's a huge potential in terms of irrigation shift there. A lot of rice farms are eligible to that shift. And at the same time, it's not a practice that is widely adopted in the Philippines. So we clearly see that this has huge potential, and this is where we're having most of our conversations now.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. That's really good to know. I think we have time for maybe one more question. So you mentioned that, reaching kind of like the underserved or the remote farming communities is kind of the focus. And, given how some of them are really far out in different rural areas, do you think kind of digital access is difficult in terms of communicating with them? Or how have you guys overcome that so far?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So first, the thing that is very important to know is that not all countries are equal in terms of digital technology adoption. So if you look at, for example, Thailand or Vietnam, farmers all have smartphones, and they use Line in general to communicate. They're very familiar with it. So these countries are very good candidates. In Indonesia, the average age of a farmer is more 60, and smartphone adoption is much lower. So depending on countries, it can be challenging or not. In terms of if you target countries where adoption is right, we actually don't necessarily need a direct access to the farmers. And that's also one of the strengths of this proposition. We go through the project developers, and project developers need to address that issue anyways. They need people on the ground who are discussing with the farmers, helping them shifting their farming practices, etc. And so we leverage this existing framework. They already have ways of working, contracts, people helping them, teaching them, etc. So we can leverage the same manpower actually to help on the insurance side.
Cool. Thank you. I think that's the focus, like you mentioned, on education for them, right? Okay, with I think 4 more minutes left. Patrick and Alex, do you guys have any kind of closing comments for the viewers on the call attending today? Or anything you'd like to elaborate about the key takeaways?
No, not necessarily. Patrick, anything to add?
No, I just would like to encourage everyone who has questions about this or is interested about learning more, to reach out to us or to reach out also to you, Hannah, right? And we are interested, in collaborating on this exciting topic, because it's highly beneficial, I think, for all of us, and can help us also as an insurance industry to reposition us out there in the market into a new light, and also contribute something for the world of our children tomorrow.
Cool, thank you. Oh, I see that we have received one more question, so I think we can answer that before we close off today's webinar, right? So the question asks, isn't the volatility of carbon credit prices nowadays, the fluctuations affecting farmers' ability to rely on this revenue to pay for insurance, especially in the long run? Yeah, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so it's true that there's a high volatility of the carbon credit market in general. As I said, usually what happens is that at the beginning of the project relies on equity investors and carbon credit buyers who contract a pre-purchase agreement. So when there's a pre-purchase agreement, the buyer agrees for the next 5 years, for example, to purchase X amount of credits at X price. And usually the project developers, for the good project, they will never go on the spot market. So they are much less exposed to the market volatility. Another reason why there's high market volatility is because there's a lot of uncertainty in general on the project quality, project capability, financial sustainability, and actually insurance helps with that. So if you bring insurance into play, you have much more confidence that the project itself will last in time, that it will still be here in 5 years, etc. So it also has an additional benefits in that regard. So we don't depend on volatility because we will only target projects that rely on long-term pre-purchase agreement. And B, usually high-quality projects don't go to spot market, and insurance helps improve the resilience of projects and remove uncertainty.
Okay, cool. I hope that answers this question. Thank you so much, Alex. Okay, so now I will close the time for Q&A, and I've just posted now the feedback form for today's session. So if you guys have any feedback or thoughts regarding today's session that you'd like to share, even with the speakers or so feel free to kind of go into the link, fill up the form, and then that will also earn 1 CPD hour. So once again, thank you so much for your time, Patrick and Alex. It was really, really nice listening to the presentation, and also a lot to learn from the slides. So I hope that everyone found it beneficial as well. So we'll end the session here. I will still keep this meeting on, so that for those who want to use the link and click in, you can still access that. So thank you very much. Please feel free to log off on your own time.
Thank you. Thank you
very
much.
So much, Patrick and Alex. See you guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.